Hi, boys and girls. How are you doing today? Are you being good? Are you ready for part 2 of our story? I hope you are because I'm so excited. So let's see how much you remember. Who remembers who this little boy is? This is Charlie. And who can remember, I'm going to give you a hint, who can remember what Charlie liked to wear on his shirt? His Sunday school pin. He loved to go to Sunday school, and he went every week, and he earned a pin. But Charlie was very, very excited because pretty soon it was going to be the very first day of school, and he was so excited to go back to school. And he and his friends were going to go shopping to buy some supplies today. And do you remember who his friends were? There was Preston, and there was the little boy with the red hair, Red. So Charlie, Preston, and Red were all going to the store to buy some school supplies, some pencils and some pens and some erasers. And when they got to the store, boy, was Walmart crowded, and they had to squish in there. And they finally found the pencil table, and they got their pencils. But do you remember what happened to Red? He dropped one of his pencils, and when he went to bend down and pick it up, he bumped into a lady and almost knocked her down. Well, he said he was sorry, and they got outside, and they had all their pencils and all their supplies. But being boys, they decided they would have a race to see who could get down the street the fastest. So off they ran, and remember, there was a lady coming out of the store, and she had something in her hand. Do you remember what she had in her hand? What did she have in her hand? She had 1, 2, 3 boxes. And do you remember what was in the box? New shoes. And she was coming out of the store with her new shoes, and Red, Charlie, and Preston, Red, Preston, Charlie, were running down the street. They weren't watching where they were going, and boom! All the shoes went flying all over the sidewalk, and they almost knocked the lady down. Well, they right away started picking up the shoes and stuffing them back in the box, and they handed them back to the lady, and they said, "Oh, ma'am, we're so sorry. We didn't mean to knock into you. We were just having fun and running and racing, and we're just so excited because school's starting pretty soon." And she said, "School? What school do you go to?" "Oh, we go to Oak Street School, and we're going to be in 5th grade tomorrow." 5th grade? I'm the 5th grade teacher. And you boys are going to be trouble. I can tell already. So I'm going to have to watch you. Well, Preston, Red, and Charlie were so scared now because the teacher doesn't like them already, and they haven't even had the first day of school. And when Charlie went to bed that night, Sunday night, he was so scared, he didn't even want to go to school the next morning. And he could hardly sleep. His eyes were open all night. And when he got up in the morning, he didn't want to eat breakfast. He didn't want to go to school. And he should have been excited because it was the first day of school. But he wasn't excited because he knew he was in trouble already. And he said, "Mom, I just don't want to go." And Mom said, "Listen, Charlie, you go to school today, and you be very, very mannerly, and you be on your very, very best behavior." And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I will." And he went to school, and he met up with Charlie, with Preston and Red, and they got their seats, and they were sitting right in front of the teacher. Now, sometimes it's really nice to have the front seat, but when you're in trouble and the teacher puts you in the front row because she got to keep an eye on you, that's not a good thing. And their teacher, Mrs. Johnson, she watched them all day long. And she had this alarm clock. Do you see the alarm clock? She had that on her desk. And man, if they were late coming back from recess, or if they were too long in the restroom, she would just really get on them. And all day long. And when they were working, she'd look over their shoulders to make sure they were doing their work right. And I'll tell you what, after about 2 days of that, Charlie, Red, and Preston were really nervous. Like they didn't want to go to school at all. So Charlie talked to his daddy that night, and he said, Daddy, we didn't do anything wrong, and we're in so much trouble. Mrs. Johnson just isn't being fair. Did you ever feel like somebody wasn't being fair? Well, that's how Charlie felt. He said, Daddy, I'm trying to be so good, and everything's going wrong. That's just not fair. Now, Charlie's daddy was a pretty smart man. And he said, Charlie, didn't you tell me you were learning something in Sunday school class? Yes, sir. Who were you learning about? Do you remember? Do you remember who he was learning about? Remember, he had a really pretty coat. Do you remember what his name was? His name was Joseph. And Joseph's daddy loved him so much that he gave him this really beautiful coat. And it had so many different colors. It was really nice. But can you see Joseph's brothers? Do they look happy? Do they have happy faces on? Or do they have faces on? They were so jealous because they didn't get a coat. Did you ever get jealous? And they did something really mean to their brother Joseph. Do you remember what they did to Joseph? They took his coat and they threw him in a deep, deep pit. And he was in there, and there was no water, and he was all alone. Do you think Joseph was really alone down there? There was nobody down there, so does that mean he was all by himself? He wasn't, because Joseph loved God very much. And everywhere Joseph went, even if Joseph felt all by himself and all scared, God was with him. Well, some people were not in a car. They were riding by in their camels and their donkeys. And the brothers had a really good idea. Well, it wasn't a really good idea, but they thought it was a really good idea. They thought, let's sell our brother. Now, did your mommy ever take you to the store and want to buy you some candy? Like maybe she wants to buy you a little candy bar or something. So she goes into Walmart and she gets you a piece of candy or something, milk or bread or something. Does she get to walk right out of the store with it? No, she has to buy it. She has to go through the checkout line. She has to give them some money. And when she gives them the money, they give her the candy bar. Well, that's what they did with their brother Joseph. The men that had all the camels, they gave the brothers some money. Do you see them holding the money? And they sold them Joseph so he could go and be a servant, go be a slave. And they took Joseph far away on that camel, far away from his daddy and far away from his brothers and far away from his home. And he went clear down to the land of Egypt. And he was sold as a slave. That means he had to do everything that he was told to do. He had to clean, he had to get the food prepared, he had to do everything. And he worked for this man. And we're going to learn a really neat way to remember his name. Now, how many of you know what this is? This is a pot. And your mommy uses a pot on the stove, and she cooks things with a pot. So we're going to take that pot, and we're going to borrow his fur. Can we borrow your fur? What do you mean, no? How about for my friends? Can we borrow it for them? Okay, we're going to borrow his soft wool, his soft fur, and we're going to take that fur We're going to put it on the pot, and that's the man's name. His name was Pot Fur. Pot of fur. Potiphar. Potiphar. Can you say Potiphar? Say it one more time. Potiphar. Now, Mr. Potiphar and Mrs. Potiphar could tell Joseph to do whatever they wanted to do because he was their slave. Now, do you think that was fair? Do you think Joseph was all by himself? You know what? He wasn't, because you know what my Bible says? My Bible says, and the Lord was with Joseph, even when he was a slave. Now, he was always very well behaved and always did as he was told to do, and he always did what God would want him to do. Now, Mrs. Potiphar tried to get Joseph to do something very bad. Do you ever have a friend that tries to get you to do something bad? Maybe something that the teacher told you not to do, or maybe talk in class, or maybe do something that your mommy doesn't allow you to do? Well, that's what Mrs. Potiphar did. She tried to get Joseph to do something that he shouldn't have done. But Joseph loved the Lord. And Joseph said, no, I won't do that, because that would make God very sad. Well, Mrs. Potiphar, if you can believe it, went and told Mr. Potiphar that Joseph did something very bad. And Mr. Potiphar believed her. And he got very angry at Joseph. And he took Joseph. Oh, I don't want you to see. Where do you see what he did to Joseph? What do you think he did to him? He took Joseph and put him in jail. Jail. He put him in prison. He put him in jail. Now, wait a minute. Joseph loved God, and Joseph followed God all the time. How can this be happening to Joseph? Why did God leave him all by himself? But Joseph wasn't by himself. Even though everything was going wrong, my Bible says, but the Lord was with Joseph. He was with Joseph in the pit, and he was with Joseph in jail. And Charlie, God is with you. He sees everything that's going on, and he is going to work that all out for your good. And Charlie said, Daddy, I forgot my verse. That's what my verse says. Do you remember the verse? Do you remember the sign? Hold your hands up like this. Do you remember what that's the sign for? Do you remember what that means? It means good. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Well, Charlie went to bed that night, and he woke up in the morning, and his eyeballs just popped open because he had the bestest idea in the whole world. I mean, it was a fantastic idea. He was going to go to school, and he was going to get Preston and Red, and they were going to stay after school, and they were going to tell Mrs. Johnson all about Jesus. This was a great idea. Why didn't he think of this sooner? So he met his buddies on the way to school, and he said, guys, I got a great idea. Let's stay after school, and let's tell Mrs. Johnson that we're Christians, and ask her if she wants to have Jesus as her Savior. And the boys were so excited, and they couldn't wait. Like, it seemed like the day was going so slow. But finally, the end of the day came, and everybody was starting to leave the room. And Charlie and Red and Preston were staying after school. But the longer they waited, can you see? They look a little scared. And it's scary to tell someone about Jesus. Sometimes it is really scary, especially when Mrs. Johnson's the person. And she looked up and she saw the boy standing there. And she said, "Did I tell you guys to stay after school?" "No, ma'am, you didn't." "Then why are you staying after school?" They didn't know what to say. And Red said, well, we wanted to tell you. And Preston, we just wanted to say that we go to church. And Red said, and we read our Bible. And Charlie said, and we're Christians. And we accepted Jesus as our Savior. And we want you to accept Jesus as your Savior too, so you could go to heaven. They were scared, but they did a good job. Well, Mrs. Johnson looked up and she goes, well, I'll tell you what, boys. Let's see what good students you are. Let's see if you can be good in class. And let's see if you can do really, really well on your test tomorrow. And we'll talk about this some other time. Now go home, because I am very, very busy. And teachers are very, very busy. And I have work to do, so go home. And the boys ran. I mean, they ran home. They ran out of that room so fast. And they ran home, and they went to Charlie's house because they were going to study so hard. And they sat and they did all their homework. And they did their history homework, and they did their math homework, and they did their reading homework. But the thing they wanted to wait till last for was their spelling test, because they thought if they all get a 100 on their spelling test, Mrs. Johnson will know that they're really good students. So Charlie said, okay, I'm going to get my spelling list out. And he's digging through his books, and he forgot his spelling book. And he said, Preston, can we borrow your spelling book? And Preston dug through his books. Preston forgot his spelling book too. Red, get your spelling list out. We got to study. And Red went through all his. Red forgot his spelling book too. Oh no, they have a test tomorrow and they don't have their spelling words. What in the world are they going to do? Mrs. Johnson's going to think they're the worst students in the whole world. Now, I'm not going to finish my story. And I'm going to say this for my little friend Nathan out there. You come back tomorrow night, and we're going to find out what the boys do because they don't have their spelling book. But before we go to bed tonight, I want you to work on your verse one time with me, because here's what I would like you to do. I would like you to learn your verse so well that you can teach it to your mommy and daddy. Because you know what? Even though little boys and girls get scared sometimes and they feel alone sometimes, so do big people. So do mommies and daddies. They have a lot to take care of. They have to take care of you, and they have to take care of the house, and they have so much to do sometimes. And sometimes they forget that God's with them too. So if you can learn your verse, you can help them during the day. So can you sing it with me maybe 2 more times just to work on it? Ready? And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Now this time, I want you to sing it so loud that they can hear it all over your neighborhood. Don't want you to shout, but I want you to sing really loud. Ready? And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. I'll see you tomorrow night. Be good and learn your verse. Love you, boys and girls. Good night.